Hello, back again on the Top Recap channel. This time I will tell a movie's entitled The Tax Collector. Let's get straight into the storyline. The story begins by showing a couple who just woke up from sleep. We are told that the husband is named David, the son of the most feared mafia boss in Mexico. Soon, they were visited by one of his kids, who asked David to pull her teeth because they were about to fall out. A few hours later, David and his extended family had breakfast together before they went about their respective activities. Also seen is David's older sister, who will soon get married. But there is no father or the mafia boss, because David's father is being held in prison for the next few years. After breakfast, David went straight to work. David is not alone, but he is accompanied by his aide, who always wears sunglasses and is known to be very brutal, named Creeper. Not long after, David and Creeper were visited by one of the gangster leaders, Victor, to pay David's tax dues. It turns out that all the gangsters in Mexico always pay taxes to David, because they are all very submissive and afraid of David's father, who is a mafia boss who controls all of Mexico. If there is a gangster who does not want to pay taxes, then David will not hesitate to finish him. Victor, the head of the gangster, asked David for help because there was one other gangster who often disturbed Victor's gang.
Be honest, Victor.
In the end, David promised to secure the gangster as long as Victor was not late in paying tax dues.
This pussy. There's no excuse.
After that, David went to his uncle, who was his father's right hand. David asked for data on the gangsters who had not paid tax dues to them, because David's father was imprisoned, and his uncle was the head of the mafia in the area. After getting the data, David and Creeper rushed to collect the gangsters who had not paid the tax fee. The first gangster David charged didn't seem to fight back, so he paid his dues immediately. Coincidentally, this gangster also always harassed Victor's gang, so David immediately lectured him. David asked the gang leader to stop harassing Victor's gang. If they still bother Victor, David will not hesitate to beat them all. The gangster leader, afraid of David, finally promised never to bother Victor's gangsters again. After that, David went to the second gangster to collect his tax dues. But when he got there, David saw that the gangster was torturing one of the black gangsters. David asked the leader of the second gangster why they were torturing a black gangster. The leader replied that the person had beaten one of his members. Hearing this, David asked the leader to let the man go. The gangster leader, afraid of David, finally released one of the black gangster members. Then David delivered the gangster member to his group. David explained what had happened to the black gangster leader named Bone. David asks Bone not to take revenge because he does not want the gangsters in his area to fight each other. In the end, Bone thanked him and promised not to take revenge on them. After that, David and Creeper returned to collect the gangsters who had not paid their dues. This time, the gangster leader, Danny, did not want to pay because he had no money. As a result, Creeper immediately pointed a gun and would finish him if the gangster leader did not want to pay taxes. Danny was finally scared and immediately paid the tax fee. Shortly after that, David continued his work, but on the way, David's younger sister called him and said that she had queued for 2 hours to order a wedding dress. However, the designer still hadn't called her yet. David finally went to the designer and whispered something. Soon, the designer gave the dress that David's sister had ordered. In the evening, after finishing work, David and his wife counted the money from the bill. However, it turns out that the total money they collected did not match, because Danny did not pay the full tax contribution. Knowing this, David and Creeper immediately went to Danny's house and pointed a gun. David asked why Danny didn't pay his dues in full. Danny begged for mercy and replied that he needed a lot of money for his son's cancer treatment. Hearing this immediately made David's heart melt, and they gave Danny leniency. Danny and Creeper immediately left the place. On the way, David was contacted by his uncle, who asked David to collect tax fees from Pablo's gangsters. The uncle explained that Pablo's gangsters had been in arrears for months, totaling 200,000. Uncle hoped that David could bring all the money tonight. Without thinking, David and Creeper go straight to Pablo's gang. Arriving there, David met a woman named Gata, a member of Pablo's gang. Gata then brought David and Creeper in to meet with gang leader Pablo. When they met, the gang leader immediately put 200,000 on the table, but he said that all the money was not for David but for Conejo, who was now beside him. Conejo was a former Special Forces captain who had defected to the mafia. Conejo told David that starting tonight, all the gangsters in Mexico would pay taxes to him instead of David. If David does not accept, then Conejo will gladly serve to fight each other as proof of who is more appropriate to oversee all the gangsters.
Some motherfucking earthquake and everything get knocked.
David, who felt outnumbered, decided to leave. After that, David went to his uncle and said he had just met Conejo. He didn't know who Conejo was but said he would take all the gangsters' tax dues. The uncle explained that Conejo was a former captain of the Special Forces and also a former subordinate of David's father. Still, since David's father was imprisoned, Conejo seemed to want to control all of David's father's power by becoming the most feared mafia boss in Mexico. Upon hearing this, David asked why they didn't attack Conejo directly. Still, his uncle said he would think of the best strategy to eliminate Conejo without any casualties. The next day, David attended his sister's wedding. He was soon approached by his uncle, who said that his uncle would meet Conejo and try to have a friendly chat. David also asked his uncle to be careful and quickly inform him if anything happened. A few hours later, Gata, Conejo's woman, visited David. Gata said that Conejo had captured David's uncle. If David still wants to see his uncle alive, then Conejo invites David to meet him at Conejo's club. Hearing this, David immediately left to save his uncle. Arriving there, David immediately met with Conejo. David threatened that if his uncle got hurt, then David would not spare them. However, Conejo was unafraid of the threat and invited David to join his gang.
Just kiss the ring and join the family.
But David still remained loyal to his father and refused Conejo's offer. Not long after, Conejo showed David's uncle's head, which had been cut off and put in a cooler. David was very upset but could not do anything because Conejo's headquarters was there. David immediately left the place. The next day, David and his men were gathering at their headquarters. They planned to attack Conejo to avenge Uncle David and show who the ruler was in that region. But suddenly, David was attacked first by Conejo's men, so there was a shootout. All of David's men were eliminated except David and Creeper. David managed to escape and immediately went to pick up his wife because he was afraid that Conejo's next target would be his kid and wife. Meanwhile, Conejo's men were still seen at David's headquarters, so they kidnapped Creeper and took him to Conejo's headquarters. Back to David, who has now managed to pick up his wife. On the way, Conejo contacted David via video call. Conejo said that Creeper had been captured and would soon be killed by him. Seeing that, David became very angry and promised to avenge everything. Arriving home, David immediately packed up and took his wife and kid to hide safely. But his wife advised David to run abroad and end it all. Hearing his wife's advice, David complied, but he had to go to his cousin's house first to get the money that David had been hiding. Once there, David immediately dug the ground because he had buried hundreds of thousands of dollars in his cousin's house yard. After successfully taking all the money, the cousin asked where David got this much money. David replied that he got this money from robbing a bank 4 years ago, along with Creeper. Then David went to his sick mother and apologized because he could not be like his father, who became the most feared mafia boss in Mexico. After that, David left to return to pick up his wife and children. On the way, David contacted his wife and told her they would soon move abroad because David had a lot of money for their family life. Hearing this, David's wife looked very happy because soon they would live in peace. But when he arrived home, David was shocked that his wife was dead. Even David could not find his children, who had been kidnapped by Conejo. This made David even more angry, so he immediately went to the Black Gangster headquarters for help. Arriving there, David immediately told the Black Gangster leader named Bone about Conejo, who had slaughtered his family and all his men. They had even kidnapped David's 2 children. David hopes Bone will help him get revenge, because David now has no one else. Bone, who felt he owed David a debt of gratitude, was willing to help David. They immediately went to attack Conejo's headquarters. Once there, David and Bone's group immediately slaughtered all of Conejo's men who were there. Unfortunately, Conejo was not there, so they kidnapped one of Conejo's men for interrogation. David finally managed to find Conejo's location and the location of David's 2 children. Then David and Bone's group went to Mrs. Conejo's house because it turned out that David's 2 children were hidden there. In short, David saved his 2 children and immediately took them away from that place. Bone's men had wanted to finish off Mrs. Conejo. Still, David forbade it because David has a principle not to finish off women or small children. Moreover, Mrs. Conejo did not know anything about this matter. After that, David entrusted his 2 children to one of Bone's men, while he and Bone's group would attack Conejo, who was in his private house. Once there, David immediately went inside and killed one by one Conejo's men. Bone was caught by Gata, the Conejo's men, but Bone quickly killed Gata. Back to David, who is now in front of Conejo's room. With burning emotions, David immediately attacked Conejo until there was a shootout. Then, they continued to duel with their bare hands until a fierce fight broke out between them. In short, David managed to kill Conejo by smashing ceramics into Conejo's face. David was seen to be badly injured. Bone then took David away before the police arrived at the place. On the way, David asked to stop because he wanted to contact his father, who was still imprisoned. When connected, David told his father everything that had just happened. David apologized for not being able to take care of his uncle and his men, who had been killed by Conejo. Upon hearing that, his father wasn't angry, but he was proud that David was now the only mob boss who would rule Mexico. The father also said that he would soon leave and David would replace his father as the Mafia King. And the movie is over. Don't forget to click subscribe, like and comment.